Hello, everybody. Oh my God, it's live. Oh, who do we have on? Welcome to Gen X Amplified Live. All right. For the first time, it is noon, April 6th, and we are here to chat all about being locked in. But specifically, as Gen Xers, as people of all generations, how are we holding on and how can we better build bridges? So just checking in on the feed. Let's see, who do we have? We are currently live on my Facebook page. We're live on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Periscope. And so please, if you are watching this now, let us know where you're watching this from, your city, and how are you holding up? Just quick words. How are you doing? All right. Let's see, who do we have on? And then I will get into introducing our esteemed guest. So just to start off, I'm doing well. My kids are upstairs. So just, the little disclaimer you get before a movie or a show where this movie may contain scenes that are not appropriate. So if you see a little one, like a 4-year-old running up in here on my lap, probably with PJs on, just kind of excuse that if you don't mind. But we are excited as well to talk about generational bridge building, how we as Gen Xers, as people in mid-career, midlife, 40 plus, how we can get through these challenging times, through crisis, and also how we can just move forward a lot better. And I've invited two wonderful guests I'm going to introduce, and I'm also just checking the LinkedIn. So just a little disclaimer, I will be able to put some of the comments that you all are putting on Facebook and even YouTube and Periscope. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, I can't put comments on the screen, but I can see the comments here on my feed, and I will acknowledge you accordingly. So we are good. So I see a couple of comments. Who do we have? David. What's going on, David, from Atlanta here in the ATL? What's going on, man? Tamara, how are you doing? My good friend Tamara Thompson, all the way from Vandy. Hope all is well. Michelle, good to see you from Nashville. Speaking of Vanderbilt, I used to live in Nashville for a couple of years. Good to see you. How's everyone doing? All right, who else do we have? Okay, first, so just to start off, again, this is all about generational bridge building through this COVID-19 coronavirus crisis. And there's been a lot of conversations out there and a lot of narratives about how different people of different ages, how this is affecting a lot of us. Actually, on the most recent episode of Gen X Amplified, I interviewed John Fort, who is a co-anchor on CNBC's Squawk Alley. And we talked a lot about this particular crisis and this pandemic and how it's affecting so many different people, especially elderly, the people that are more vulnerable to the virus. Obviously, whether they're in nursing homes or just physically and health-wise, they're very susceptible. And then we have people like my kids that are upstairs that they're no longer in school and they're being homeschooled or crisis schooling, if you will. But then there's been discussions about, well, Gen Xers, because the way we are and the way we grew up, we're built for this. And, sure, TV dinners, frozen foods, social distancing, we got this, we can do this. But I wanted to really uplift the conversation to talk about how we, of all generations, particularly people that are Gen X and 40 plus, kind of in the middle, how we can really use our expertise and insights to really bridge these generations, the Gen Zs and the alphas on the younger end, and even our great boomers and seniors and traditionalists. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our first guest. So all the way from Dallas, Texas, she is a speaker, a consultant, an author. She's also a podcaster now. She is the founder of a great nonprofit, More Than a Movement. Please welcome my Gen Exceptional live stream guest, Tara Jaye Frank. Tara, what is going on?
I'm not Tara.
We are live.
I love it. Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Adrian.
No problem. It's so good to see you. And look, we are live. I'm winging it. And hey, we're all good. So
yes.
It's good to see you. So thank you for joining us. And so up next, since I already gave you a sneak peek, how we do it, we also have all the way from New York City, my old stomping ground, who is a great speaker and author, a New York Times bestselling author, and also a podcaster, and she's the author of the recent book, The Remix, all about multi-generational building in the workplace. And please welcome my Gen Exceptional live stream guest. Finally, and here is Lindsey Pollak.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you. This is fun.
All right, this is fun. So let's get right into it. So I really want to use this moment for our audience I want to bring you guys specifically on for multiple reasons. Number one, because you're awesome. And I've had the pleasure to talk to you previously on this podcast, Gen X Amplified, about your specific stories and your journeys. And more importantly, specifically, what you do professionally. Tara, you are, again, a speaker. I think all three of us were speakers. So I do want to talk also about professionally, how this is impacting our business, because it's definitely been challenging. But Tara, you're a speaker and you've worked in the corporate sector for many years, like myself, I think over 20 years or so for Hallmark Cards, the greeting card company. But you made that career transition in mid-career, and you're now on your own as a consultant. But you talk a lot about bridge building, building bridges, whether it's along racial lines, age lines, just emotional lines, just no matter what type of gaps you see that's not really productive in personal and professional growth or growth for us as a society. You talk a lot about building bridges. So I thought it was great to have you on. And Lindsey, you have spent many years talking about generations. You are an expert on really the multi-generational workplace and helping people look at those different nuances and navigate all of us across all age groups and all generations so we can really be more productive. So that's why I really wanted to bring you guys back on to do this Gen X Amplify live stream to talk specifically about we're here. We're in this moment. We have this pandemic that we're dealing with, and it's affecting all of us at so many levels. And there's a lot of conversation around, well, obviously it's affecting the older generation because, again, they're more susceptible to the virus based on studies. And again, COVID-19 doesn't have any bias. This isn't any crisis bias across anybody, obviously, as we've learned. But if you're older or if you have other underlying conditions, it tends to be affecting you a little bit more. And so there's a lot of talk about the older generation. And personally, I've been affected. My parents, who are home in Memphis, Tennessee, but my father, he's going through some health issues and he's in a nursing home. Actually, I had to put him in a nursing home in the past couple of weeks. And unfortunately, he can't see any visitors. He can't receive any visitors from his sisters and his brothers. And if I want to hop in my car to go see him, I can't do that because of this crisis. And then I have my kids who are here at home. So, but us, Gen Xers, people like us, Tara, Lindsey, I wanted to talk and give really insights for all of us. And I want to learn as well. Number one, I want you to start off. How has this affected you personally, professionally? If you choose to be candid, how are you dealing with this? And what are some of those best practices for both of you? And then I want to talk about what can we do as people that are in the middle phase of our careers, primarily generationally Gen Xers. How can we, number one, move forward and get through this crisis? And how can we also, and better yet, use the lessons that we are learning to help other generations to become the natural, more powerful bridge builders that we already are? So Tara, I want to, if you don't mind, let's talk about how you're holding up and through this crisis and some of the things that you have learned.
Well, first of all, thanks again for having me. And second of all, you didn't yet ask me about my pandemic song. My theme song.
That is true. I was going to get to that, but I'm good. So you guys need to be thinking about this now. So you know how we do it on Gen X Amplified. All right. I always ask at the end of the episode, my guests, if there was
I had to save that for the end. I just kept thinking about it because it was so funny.
I'm going to do it now. I was letting people know on my podcast. I asked all my guests if there was a song that would play every time you walk down the street or into a room that would fit you. What would be your own personal theme song? But for today, if you could think about what song will fit you at this moment that would describe you, that really captures the essence of us going through this, what would that be? So yes, you can definitely tell us what that is.
So actually, I can't say that it describes me, but I will tell you, I saw a meme the other day and it said, your COVID-19 pandemic theme song is whatever the number one song was when you turned 12 years old.
Oh my God.
So I went online and I Googled my birthday and, the year that I turned 12.
Yes.
And the song was Venus.
Venus.
And I don't know if you remember that song.
Yes.
There you go. I'm your power. Yeah. So what was funny about that is the very first line of the song is "Goddess on a mountaintop." So I got a big kick out of that because I was like, I'm going to work to embrace this goddess on a mountaintop thing. Right. And figure out basically, which is the connection I'm making.
Right.
What it means to have a platform in a time like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does it mean, right, to have a voice, to have a community of people who look for your voice, your words, your insight in order to make their lives better? And how do I embrace that opportunity and also that responsibility? So thanks for asking that question, because I got such a kick out of that. I was listening to the song and I was like, what a weird way to start a song. But then, typical Tara, I'm like, what can I make of this moment?
Yes.
So you asked me how I'm doing. And the truth is, it's day to day. I'm just going to be honest. Last week was a bit of a roller coaster. I think I started when we first got like a stay-at-home order. We were doing it before there was really an order. I live in Texas. So we were doing it as soon as we got back from our spring break vacation. Mm-hmm. I was in this hyper productive mode. Okay. I was like, okay, I'm going to be home. I'm not going to be on the road that much. There are a lot of things I've been wanting to do. I'm going to do them. So I was the one sharing memes about productivity and leveraging the time and figuring out different ways to plug in. So that was week 1.
Okay.
Week 2 was like, oh, wait, this isn't working as well as I thought it would be. And it wasn't because I didn't have a little bit of time and a little bit of capacity. And I know we'll talk about professional implications here shortly. Right. But it was because it was starting to weigh on me, emotionally and spiritually. And so then I started kind of grasping on to the articles and the memes that said, don't succumb to the pressure of being the most productive you've ever been in your life. Because some of us, honestly, are just trying to find our moment or our space of sanity and of peace. And that, I have anxiety. I've suffered from anxiety since I was 6 years old. And so at a time like this, when you kind of combined a generalized anxiety with a global pandemic and, 6 children at home, which we have because everybody is home. Wow. And aging parents around the corner who I probably shouldn't really see, but try to see every few days, even if it's just kind of a wave or an air kiss. It's a lot, it's a lot. So how am I doing today? I'm doing great. You gave me a reason to do my hair and put some makeup on and even wear a blazer, which I've not done in God knows how long. And so today I'm doing well. That's me personally. I know we'll talk professionally, but I'd love to hear how Lindsey's doing personally first.
How are you doing? Well, thank you, Tara, so much for that.
Yes.
How are you doing, Lindsey?
Thank you for sharing all that. And Adrian, thank you for giving us a platform. As you said, Tara, it's very up and down. I go for walks every day. I live in New York City, which is the epicenter, as everybody knows, and it feels that way. It's frightening. Nature, walks in the park. If you've probably heard the news at 7 p.m., everybody cheers and hoots and hollers out the window for the first responders, which is something that we all look forward to. I have one child, 8-year-old, who's in the other room, and my husband. So I don't have quite as many children, but I think that sandwich generation feel of Gen X hits harder at a time like this. So homeschooling is very challenging. And I don't know how anyone has more than one child, because it's hard enough with one child to do that. Right. Plus fears about aging parents, plus a 2-career family. We're trying to keep that going. I think when you think about multitasking and how good we all are, what I always say is it takes a village. I have so much help, Yeah. We don't have that now. Right. And so when you really are confronted with being a parent, being a child, being a friend, being a spouse, being a business owner, being a 2-career couple, living in a city, it's a lot. And I also suffer from anxiety from a very young age. I take medication, and it's sort of the perfect storm of anxiety, of uncertainty, fear, health-related concerns. And to me, the uncertainty piece of how long, how deep, how bad, health, it's kind of a perfect storm. So back to basics, right? Nature, eating healthy, except for a whole lot of peanut M&Ms at night, which I just might have reordered, and yoga and walking and adult coloring books and anything that kind of keeps it safe. But keeping busy has been very helpful to me. So opportunities like this are very valued. And Adrienne, thank you for inviting us to do it. I've been really honored by the number of people who have stepped up and invited others to be part of what they're doing. And I think that is also helping to keep me going. But overall, healthy and safe, and very grateful for that.
Yeah,
I'm very glad you're healthy and safe. And the peanut M&Ms. Tara, you're a dark chocolate.
Oh my gosh, yes, I love dark chocolate, and I've been cooking a lot.
Okay.
And well, I have a large family, so it makes sense. But I've been cooking a lot, and I've also been baking a ton.
Yeah.
And my favorite pastime during like Christmas or Thanksgiving, when I usually have more time off, is to take a regular sweets recipe and then replace as many of the things as I can with like almond flour and Lily's chocolate chips. So I had a complete disaster the other day of banana bread with chocolate chips that went very south. But I'm just, I'm experimenting, and I'm baking, and I'm certainly, my husband is a fitness how do I say this? Connoisseur. He's not, that's not what he does for a living. He's an executive as well. He works for Adobe, but he's been setting up like a full-on gym in our garage in our courtyard. And so the family's been working out, at least every other morning. And that certainly does help. And also, one of the positive things, honestly, about kids not getting up at the crack of dawn to go to school is I've been getting more sleep, which I've just been trying to embrace. Like, my kids are not young. Your children are young, so that really changes things. But I've just been trying to get more rest and realize that, you got to kind of take the good stuff with all of the stuff that's not so good.
No, you definitely do. Lindsey, you say you have 8. What's your daughter's name?
Chloe. She's in 3rd grade.
Chloe. Now, theme song. What was the theme song for this moment?
So what popped into my head as a true child of the 80s, and I did, Tara just did your thing. I was 12 years old in 1987.
Okay.
So number 1 was Walk Like an Egyptian.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
But number 2 was Alone by Heart. So I feel like that's very prescient. And then number 4 was Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody. So I feel like all of those are kind of like on point for this situation. The one that came to mind was, remember that Talking Heads song, This Is Not My Beautiful House, This Is Not My Beautiful Wife, This Is Not My Beautiful, I think it's called Once in a Lifetime. So like, this is not my life. This is not my business. This is not my day to day. So that sort of like, where am I, is kind of what came to mind.
That is such a perfect once in a lifetime. Talking Heads, that actually fits. So I'm trying to think, and so I was.
What's yours?
So you said 83. That was probably
87. I was 12 years old in 1987.
So
Yeah.
12 years old for me. I'm giving my age. We saw this about it. I was in 1983, I believe. So that was probably either Michael Jackson's "Beat It," which probably defines how I've been just probably beating the couches and stuff. But no, I don't know. For me, it would be probably once in a lifetime, or trying to get out of this moment. Something with word crazy in it, or I've Got the Power, which is my typical theme song. So how can I use this to really just energize myself and just do what I can do to navigate the kids? And Tara, and both Lindsey and Tara, thank you for sharing those stories. Yeah. And thank you for being candid, really, about how this has affected you even mentally. And I do think that's something that we should talk about. That's actually another conversation that I want to have on this platform and moving forward, just about even people in mid-career, midlife. And I talk a lot about the mid-career malaise or the midlife malaise, and how we can look at ways to transform that into mastery. And a lot of us, we do go through sometimes mental health challenges, whether they're big or small, and just because we have so much that we're tackling. And so when you have a moment like this, that's once in a lifetime, it intensifies those underlining feelings of malaise or just trying to go day to day. And again, you mentioned Lindsey, naturally as Gen Xers, we're sandwiched. Again, elderly parents looking after their needs, young kids. You have one, Tara, you have, I don't know how you, well, six, majority of them will probably be.
Remember, they're older.
They're older, yes. So
that helps.
That helps a lot. I have a 4-year-old and 11-year-old. And so it's been a challenge. And as well, like yourself, my wife, she works professionally full time. I'm here as a solo entrepreneur. And what I do and what all three of us do, which we can talk about, is that we monetize a lot of what we do through speaking and being in front of other people and having conversations. So that has obviously been challenged. And so for me, it's really been kind of taking a step back and looking at ways how I can utilize this moment to bring in community more for people like you and for people that are watching and that may be going through these similar career paths. And how can I use all of us as a community and through content to look at best practices, to think about how can we as a sandwich generation go through this. So speaking of sandwich generation, let's talk specifically about us as bridge builders. So you shared your personal stories, which I thank you for. And all three of us, we have kids, we have elderly parents, and we're looking at this crisis. And it was actually an article that I read this morning in my Google alert feed, and they were talking specifically about Gen Z and how many generations are shaped in their formative years by things that happen, right? For us, it was the Challenger explosion and the crack epidemic, the AIDS epidemic, right? And so many other things. And then for a lot of times for millennials, it was the recession of 2008. And this will be the time where Gen Z, I mean, this is the COVID-19 crisis is really here during their formative years for different reasons. So how will Gen Z be shaped by this, and what will they remember? My son right now, who's a Gen Z, he's now homeschooled. He's in the 5th grade. He's no longer going to have this 5th grade fun day they were planning, this big trip, and that's going to be taken away from him. He's handling it in stride, but that's it. My daughter, who's Gen Alpha, is really hasn't affected her as much. But for us, let's talk about not only how it's shaping the formative years of Gen Z, but for us as Gen Xers, I mean, we're being shaped by this. And Lindsey, I would like for you just to give your perspective on how can we as a generation, what have you seen as far as how the generations are handling this crisis? And specifically, what are some of the ways that it's affecting us as Gen Xers differently, not better than or worse than, but differently than some of the other generations?
So like a true middle-aged Gen Xer, I have to put on my glasses because my eyes are starting to hurt watching that.
I love it. They're cute though.
Oh, thank you very much. So it's a great question, and I'm always really good. Yay! Thank you, Tara. I feel so much better. Those are cool.
Solidarity.
So cool. Yes, thank you. It's all new to me. I didn't get glasses till I was 45.
I love it.
So a lot of thoughts. One is I never want to totally generalize because everybody's different, right? Everybody has personal experiences. That said, one of the reasons I think generations are a helpful tool to use to think about how people might interact or behave, or as an element of diversity, is those formative moments that you share together.
Right.
And I think there is absolutely no question that this experience is going to shape Gen Z. It will affect all of us, but it will shape, I think, the experiences. And it's interesting, you said your son is in 5th grade. Psychologists say that when you're really imprinted with a generation is around puberty, like age 10 to 13 or so. Right. So your son will be the generation that really makes decisions and votes and chooses life paths and financial opinions based on what's happening right now. So, my hunch, and we never know for sure, is that the young people going through this right now will probably be much more conservative financially, right? Will be cautious with their money. Bad things can always happen. Very similar, I think, to the traditionalist World War II generation who went through the Great Depression, and our own Gen X generation who saw, wow, things aren't always great. Bad things can happen. Urban centers can fall apart. All those sort of terrible tragedies that we witnessed, they impact everybody. But when you see it at a formative age, you start to really get that ingrained in you. So I also think that a lot of members of traditionalist era generation, World War II, went into the medical profession, went into helping professions, right? Wanted to give back. And so I could see young people watching this and saying, I wanted to help. I wanted to make a difference. From the social distancing piece, I think all of those trends we were seeing of young people not having good communication skills and the anxiety and the mental health concerns, I think are going to be off the charts. And I think we have to think about that like they should have thought more about the PTSD of veterans in World War II, right? So I think we can be really mindful of that. I think for Gen Xers, we've sort of been here before. And I don't want to say that this is similar, that this is the same as the financial crisis or other recessions, but we went through the recession in the 90s. We went through the dot-com bust. We went through 9/11. We went through the financial crisis. We've kind of done this, and not to say that we're blasé about it, but I think we can talk about the ways that we've handled it. I'm very, 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 very concerned about college students and recent graduates who already have the student debt, and now this is being piled upon it. So personally, I'm going to offer free webinars to college students about getting jobs. I think LinkedIn has done a tremendous job of kind of pulling together who is hiring right now. But they've even compared that we as Xers were in the same kind of age range as millennials are now when we experienced the Great Recession, but we were significantly better off because we didn't have the student loan debt that they have. So when you compound the student loan debt plus the unemployment plus the stock market crash now, it's a lot more challenging for millennials than even we experience. So I think everyone comes at it from a different perspective. And certainly this is impacting everybody, especially if you have a loved one who is sick. But I think some of the implications are different depending on what generation you're viewing it from.
Got it. Love that.
I think if you don't mind, I'd like to weigh in. I honestly think it's also different, not just generationally, but based on kind of culturally, right? And what may be going on, because I did have student loan debt, during some of those experiences for sure. And so did a lot of the people with whom, I went to school or with whom I moved through the world. But it's interesting because to Lindsey's point, we've been here before in terms of dealing with crisis. What I and some of my peers have not been through before is parenting children through this kind of thing. And honestly, that is an experience unto itself, right? So I'm experiencing this as an individual, as a Gen Xer, but I'm also experiencing it as a parent of many teenagers, and then as a child, right, of boomers who are in a stage of life where they really need our help and our support, resources and otherwise, to a pretty extreme degree. And so this sandwich, we always kind of heard about sandwich generations and that generation changes, over years.
Right.
But it is very real. I have a senior in high school right now who won't have a prom, who likely won't have a graduation, who's trying to, I think, understand and embrace what this transition is going to mean. But Generation Z is being shaped not only by this, gosh, think about the pace of change, right? Over the last decade, because of technology, everything's changing so rapidly. So their defining moments are many. They are numerous. They're not only COVID, it's also school shootings and police brutality and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Political unrest to a degree that I had never seen before this point. So the number of influences for this generation, it's kind of overwhelming. And as I said, what matters to me as a Gen Xer is just having to move them through all of these impacts, seemingly one after another after another. It's a lot. I mean, it really is a lot.
Wow. Thank you for that, Tara and Lindsey. And both of you made very valid and complementary points, which I think is great because it showcases how we're not, from a generalization sense, the different Gen Xers have different experiences. And even specifically, Lindsey, you mentioned, you're right, Gen Z will definitely be shaped by this in a very specific way, the way we were shaped through some of those other experiences growing up, and through the way millennials were shaped through the 2008. Because my son, you're right, 10 to 13 years, he will remember this, and he will definitely, it may allow him to be a little bit more prudent and just think about things differently. But at the same time, yes, we've been through this. We've been through these type of things in life that were challenging and really changed how we look at different perspectives. But Tara, as you brought up, I've never been through this as a parent. I've never been through this where, as a professional, with my wife, and even as an entrepreneur as well, trying to maintain a level of financial security and income while mentally and emotionally being there for my kid, for both of my kids who have taken away from their habitat with their friends at school and their teachers. And my daughter, she's 4, she's young, but I'm surprised she hasn't gone crazy, because she has a little friends at daycare that she goes to, and she talks about, she plays, and she's running around, but I think it's affecting her probably beyond what she really thinks. And so for my wife and I to be there for them, and which I really want to talk about, because this is really about not only how we go through this as Gen Xers, so because you guys brought up those points, how we manage this and how we handle it, and how do we showcase how we handle it, especially to our kids or even for other people. Because I have to be mindful of myself, because this is frustrating, but there's a level of frustration that I shouldn't show for my kids. And that's hard because we're human, right? I mean, there are times where I'm concerned, but I want them to be able to look at me to see, well, Adrian, my dad is handling this, but I do want to show maybe a sense of vulnerability to let them know that this is real. So it's and I'm learning it's battling those two things. And so that's very challenging. And you're in New York, Lindsey, you're in Dallas, and I'm in the ATL, and we have different ways that this virus is affecting our local communities. In New York, right. Oh my God, you're in the epic center. You're at what they call it, not ground zero. I don't know what they call it.
I think they're calling it the epicenter. Yeah.
Of this, and because more than half of the cases or the deaths, I believe, are in the New York metro area. And so I can't even imagine how this is affecting not only you, but even your daughter. And I'm just curious, for your daughter who's 8, and you mentioned, Tara, your son, and which I know is a senior, so this is unfortunately has affected his traditional events of celebration during this moment, which I know is hard for not only for him, but for you to even see as a parent. But Lindsey, for your 8-year-old, I'm just curious, has she mentioned, have you guys talked about this, or have you noticed any type of, not anxiety, but just questions or being inquisitive about this, and how is it affecting her specifically, if you don't mind sharing?
It's so interesting, and I'm certainly not a parenting expert. I've been reading a ton. One of the things I've read that's been most helpful is, she doesn't come out and say, I'm scared about coronavirus, but she suddenly is scared of other things, right? Or doesn't want to watch certain movies because they're scary, or, is scared. Other anxieties are coming out that are not about that, but certainly are trouble sleeping, itchy skin, all these little things that I think are really anxiety about what's going on. It was interesting. The first few nights that they had the cheering at 7:00, she didn't want to do it because it was a reminder of the virus, right? So it was very hard to sort of separate the positive things that are happening from why we're here. So we really try to limit how much we talk about it. We don't have the news on. We don't have the radio or TV on in any way. We talk about it. We talk about how we get to be together as a family and how we're glad we're safe. But you can't avoid it entirely. I think that connection with her friends is really important. They do a lot of Zoom calls, but she sort of told me the other night how much she said, I miss normal. And I thought, the social need and how much kids get out of that is tremendous, particularly at a young age. And, I'm sure your 4-year-old will feel it too. just seeing her miss her friends is really, really tough to watch. As much as we are bonding together as a family and trying to embrace it, also she's watching like 23 hours a day of TV and iPad and all that stuff. So I don't want to say we're doing anything perfectly, but it's like you said, it's unprecedented. No one's ever parented through this, so we're learning a lot. I'd love to hear your experiences with different age kids.
Yes. Well, me specifically, it's been so again with Cameron, my son, who's in the 5th grade. He's actually just had spring break. So all last week, our county here in Georgia, they were on spring break. And so spring break, not in the traditional sense, by the way, it's a spring break from digital learning. So he's handling it much better than I thought. And I preface that by saying, because he knows, and we talked about it, like, well, Cameron, you're not going to go on this special 5th grade trip anymore that he was looking forward to all year, where they got to get on this really cool bus and they have televisions and they get away, and he's been talking about it. And it broke my heart when I saw the email from his teacher, and then I saw the news of how they're going to make it a mandate for schools to be closed the remainder of the school year. And I asked him specifically, I said, Cameron, hey, how are you doing? And are you okay? And he's fine. And that's good, but then I worry because I don't know how expressive he's willing to be. And again, he may be totally fine. Like, I have full confidence in my son and how he's handling this. But for him, it's been a matter of just taking it in stride. But I have noticed moments, for example, last week or the week prior, when it was announced they were going to have another week of digital learning at home. And he had this look on his face like, and still he really missed being in school. He misses it. My daughter, for her, and then I'll talk how I'm handling it. For my daughter, she doesn't really know what's going on, or she does, but she hasn't really expressed it. But it's been more of a challenge for us because she requires a lot of attention as a 4-year-old, and which she should. And so when I'm unable to give her that type of attention that she normally gets from her daycare teachers and her friends at school on the playground, it's how we manage that. So for us, Lindsey, to your question, it's been challenging. I mean, I think we've done the best that we can do. And I think that's the quote of the day and the week and the month. But I'm still trying to learn. I'm still trying to make sure that I am emotionally there for them, to make sure that they don't panic. And at the same time, I have to make sure that I take care of myself. Mm-hmm. So which I do want to talk about, because as we have gone through this, and Lindsey, you mentioned we've been through this type of, or been through crisis many times before, at different levels and different ages. How do we move forward and get through this and continue to be the bridge builders that we are in that sense? Because again, I've had many conversations, and actually I was mentioning entirely, I believe, a friend of mine I went to Vanderbilt with, Cindy Kent, and phenomenal lady. She and I are really good friends. And we had a conversation recently about this pandemic and specifically about Gen X. And we talked about it. She mentioned, this may be our moment of truth, in addition to other moments of truth, because professionally, when we get through this, and this is over, and this will be over, hopefully sooner than later, hopefully before 18 months before there's a vaccine, because I don't think I can take it. But we will be able to go through this and professionally be in a position of power where maybe there may be opportunities for us from a leadership perspective. And there may be people that are older than us. They may be rethinking where they are as far as their careers, as far as C-suite CEOs and officers and presidents. And they may be looking to just kind of take a step back. So that leaves a vacuum for people in our generation to excel in those roles. And then entrepreneurs, it leaves an opportunity for us to look at this type of dynamic and utilize these type of tools that we're utilizing now and look at ways to be transformative and innovative. And so I would just like to talk to both of you and get your perspective on what lessons and what advice would you give for us as Gen Xers to become better bridge builders, become better leaders, and use this moment to do that. But how would you advise us to do that? Where should we start? I'll start with Lindsey, if you don't mind, just giving some advice, and then Tara.
I always think about, where can I help? Who can I serve? How can I bring people together? Where can I play that role? One of my small habits, and then I'll pass it to Tara, is just saying yes to anything I'm invited to do. So this live stream, podcast interviews, just where can I take advantage of opportunities when they're presented to me and be helpful to anyone who is seeking that voice. I also think as Gen Xers in particular, we've always been the bridge builders. And so on Zoom calls, helping young people by knowing that we've been through this before, we're going to be okay, and helping older people maybe adapt to the technology that might be uncomfortable. It might be easier for a baby boomer to ask a Gen Xer for help than to go all the way to the Gen Z. Not always, but sometimes. So I'm just trying to offer myself as someone who can help in any way. And people have been taking advantage of that in different ways. But that's sort of where I'm trying to position myself, is to be visible, I think, as a bridge. Visibility, I think, is really important for Xers who want to be leaders right now.
I love that visibility. I love that. Tara?
Yeah. So a couple of things that I've really been thinking a lot about. One of them is the fact that, so many women and especially women of color have kind of gotten caught in this whole superwoman thing, right? I can do all the things and make everything work and make everybody happy. And one of the first things that I threw by the wayside, quite honestly, when all of this went down, is the whole idea of perfectionism. And I'm not suggesting that's new, that, a lot of people are talking about the downside of being a perfectionist. But I do believe that when something like this happens, and even the most accomplished leaders are on a Zoom call with you trying to figure out which button they need to push, and there's a dog barking in the background and a child comes and passes through and asks to go potty, it's easier during times like this to recognize that there really is no benefit in hanging on so tightly to the idea of being perfect. And so that's something that I believe, if we can really use this opportunity to embrace our humanity, then we'll be a lot happier as human beings moving forward. The second thing I would say is really shedding light on what we have in common, which, as you know, is kind of the heart of More Than a Movement.
Right.
Is a really powerful way for us to continue to build bridges right now. We do have a shared humanity. We're all experiencing this very thing together, right? And as you mentioned in the beginning, this virus has no bias. It's not only going after these people or those people. We are all in this together in this moment. And I think if we can embrace that, understand that, and meet each other where we are, then hopefully we can be more powerful collectively coming out of it. So it's one, acknowledge that nobody knows exactly what to do now or exactly how to do it. But two, to reach for each other, more than we have been. We've been so isolated. We've been in our echo chambers. Some of us still are on certain days, depending on what's happening on TV. But but it is an opportunity to kind of break out of that and recognize that every individual has a gift to give right now, has knowledge to share, has a benefit to provide, and tapping into that, I believe, is one of the most powerful things we can do.
Those are very powerful words too, and you're right. I think working together, it will really help all of us. And as you mentioned, Lindsey, we have been natural bridge builders all of our lives. And I think right now, professionally, I've noticed that too. For example, we're able to help the younger generations with some of these technical tools as well. And actually they learn from them. My daughter, which is amazing, she's a Gen Alpha in the generational sense, and she adapts so quickly to how to use some of these tools. But at the same time, when it comes to soft skills or leadership or relationship building, those are some of those inherent human skills that we have naturally been groomed through experience, that I think that we adapt to so well that we can also help the younger generations even before this crisis. And then when I do coaching, I've coached younger generations as far as millennials and even some Gen Zs on some of these tools, or at least give them a window into their future career of some of the things that will be so important for them as they move into their career trajectory, such as soft skills, because so oftentimes we rely upon these technical skills and I have to learn this and I have to do this. But I've learned through the hard way many times is that really nurturing those soft skills are very important. So those are the type of counsel that I give to younger people. At the same time, the boomers and the traditionalists and the silent generations, obviously from a technical standpoint, we're able to help them learn. So I think moving forward, that's how we will continue to move forward. But also, I just want to talk specifically. So a lot of people right now prior to and right now, they're thinking about their job security. And many Gen Xers, as you know, have either been laid off or they're having challenges looking for employment. And even people that are looking to start their own business, if they were thinking about it before, right now they're second guessing it, especially as a mid-career professional. So I'm just curious, based on your thoughts, what advice or what are some of the things that we can do to help navigate through this if we are job seekers, knowing the challenges that are out there when it comes to ageism, or in what ageism specifically, and how it affects people that are 40 plus as opposed to the younger generations. And again, not to stereotype, but there's so many job security challenges that are happening right now for everyone. But before this happened, there a lot of times for people that are 40 plus. So Tara, I'm just curious to hear from you. What are some of the ways, as job seekers, there are people that either lost their job yesterday, they will lose their job tomorrow. How do we move forward after this? And what are some of the lessons from this challenge, from this crisis, that we can do to help us go through this?
That's a really interesting question. And you kind of made me think. I'm not sure to what degree people who are 40-ish are experiencing hiring bias, because usually, the folks who are in control tend to lean into their affinity biases, right? And more people kind of between 40 and 60 are in those decision-making positions. So I'm not sure if it's a generational concern with the hiring bias, but it can certainly be just where people have worked before or not worked, right? Whether they've taken a break from corporate to do their own thing, what brands they've worked for or not worked for. I think there are a lot of different kinds of biases, what school they went to, a lot of different kinds of biases we kind of run up against when we're trying to not only transition from place to place, but to plant new seeds, right? To do something new or different than what we've been doing. Right. And I do believe, I was talking to somebody about this on LinkedIn, I do believe, and Lindsey, you mentioned this earlier, that there are a lot of people who maybe have been thinking about entrepreneurship, who have been doing it, who are kind of rethinking what stability looks and feels like to them right now, and what really is job security. And what does that mean to me? So I would give them the same advice I give anybody, even people who are in the midst of their career, which is to say, there's no time like the present to get really clear about your differentiated value as a leader, as a worker, as an employee. And what I mean by that is each of us has value to bring to the table, right? If you're a financial analyst and you know numbers, that does not really differentiate you. Everybody in finance should. Yes. But there are things I think that each of us can kind of further refine that really set us apart in the workplace, right? If you're a financial analyst who also happens to be a fantastic storyteller, well, that is a differentiated value that can really help you stand out in a marketplace like this. So I always ask people, just consider certainly what is core to your value, but what sets you apart, right? And then what kind of impact do you want to be making, and how do you want to contribute over the next few years? Because if we can tap into our purpose, our passion, and also what sets us apart, I think we can get a lot more clear about what our next steps should be. I would say secondarily that no time like the present to really build your network. I mean, it boggles my mind how many people I still meet who will say, well, I don't use LinkedIn. I don't like LinkedIn. Right. I don't think it matters. I don't, it doesn't work. And I'm like, no,
yes,
don't do it. We have got to have external networks as well as our internal network. So good time for that.
Yes, agree. Lindsey?
I love that answer for so many reasons. I want to get more tactical, which is my biggest concern for job seekers of any generation right now is to be paralyzed by the current situation and not do anything. All you hear is there are no jobs. Unemployment is a disaster. And that it is uncertain, and it is horrible, and it is devastating. But there are jobs and there are opportunities. Think of all of the action you can take amid the uncertainty and amid the unemployment to move yourself forward. I lost my job. I worked for a .com in the late 90s that went out of business in the year 2001, and then 9/11 hit. And I was unemployed, and unemployment was terrible, and my severance ran out, and I started freelancing. And, you know, to the question of, is this a good time for entrepreneurship? We all know Gen Xers are very entrepreneurial. I think you need to do both. I job hunted like crazy while I was also freelancing. And the balance came to be that freelancing won, and I started my business in 2002, but I didn't know that at the time. So I think now a lot of it is about quantity. How much action can you take? How many people can you connect with? LinkedIn has a fantastic hashtag about, you know, who's hiring right now. I think it's hashtag hiring now. Yeah. Startups are hiring. Businesses are hiring. So don't sort of say nothing is out there, I'm just going to sit at home and be depressed. I think action is really, really, really powerful. The other thing I want to mention, because I work a lot with universities, university career centers, if you've gone to college, will serve you for the rest of your life. So even if you are a Gen Xer in your 40s or 50s, you can go back to your college and ask for a resume review. Certainly join the network, as Tara said, of your LinkedIn group, of your alumni. Everybody knows what's going on right now. No one's going to be surprised if you're job hunting or seeking help. And I've been actually astonished in a positive way of how many people are offering free resume critique, free interview training, opportunities galore. I know LinkedIn has taken their recruiting staff and offered them out to companies that are hiring right now to help them find talent. So people want you to get a job. What you have to do is meet them by taking action to apply and taking action to update your resume. Do not be paralyzed by this situation if you are looking for a job right now.
Wow, that's such powerful advice for both of you. And Tara, you mentioned just allowing us to utilize our network and community. And you mentioned LinkedIn, obviously. And for those of you who are LinkedIn watching this live, this is the real reason why it's such a critical platform. But just building relationships and nurturing those relationships, and then coupling that with taking action. I didn't think about that before, because we're right. We're all paralyzed. I mean, this is a very unique moment. And I heard, I believe, a physician yesterday on television reference this. It actually was an economist who compared this to an induced coma. And so you had to describe what we're doing right now. Are we moving closer toward the Great Depression in those ways, those dynamics? Or are we more closer towards 2008 recession? And this is more like a medically induced coma, where it's intentional to just stop, to allow us to heal, to get back on track. But sometimes that medically induced coma, you can come out of it. But it's the time for us to take a step back, to learn, and just to stop. And so I love, Lindsey, that you said you would encourage people to not necessarily over panic, but when you're thinking about job security or entrepreneurship, just take a step back and utilize ways how we can add value and build better bridges. And I talk about this all the time through my coaching and consulting, and this framework I talk a lot about nurturing your relationship and utilizing your skills. And so glad both of you said that, because this is a moment where a lot of us, just Gen Xers, we have the years of experience. We have relationships that we have developed and cultivated over the course of the years. And there may be people that you have not talked to in 5 years that's in your talking old school Rolodex, or in your phone, or even go in some of your file cabinets and look at some of your papers and and just think about in your mental Rolodex some of the people that you have had a fascinating moments with. Call them up, send them an email, because right now we're all at home. We're all at home, and we're thinking about the next step. And as Gen Xers, while you don't want to generalize, just based on our years of experience, we do have assets and arrows in our quiver that we can use at this moment to think about, well, if I do want to start a business right now, let me just take a step back and see ways in how I can add value first. And then maybe those fruits will come out. So I'm glad both of you said that. I saw a comment in LinkedIn as well from someone had specifically mentioned that they have been job searching or they have been laid off. And so for some of us, that reality is real. And they have heard this, they have gone through this. And for a lot of us, some people have actually searched for employment, and they have felt that they were discriminated against because of their experience per se. And so when you just think about that, as we wrap this up soon, we're at this moment for people that are seeking jobs. Yes, let's stop. Let's take a step back and don't overanalyze it. But how can we, as unique people in our generation, what's the next thing that we should do right now based on our skills and our network and our relationships that we can do to move forward and really get us out of this moment? And what immediately comes out to you as far as specifically in this moment? Should we start reaching out to other people, or can we look at our skill sets that we have developed? What is the lesson or the things that you would tell everyone? Hey, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. What would be your recommendation? Tara.
So I would definitely say, practically speaking, to make sure that your resume reflects your most recent experience. I would certainly think about what kind of organization or company you might be interested in or want to work for. Scour LinkedIn for people you may know who work for or are connected to people at those organizations. Do some reach outs, to folks that you know and ask them if they can connect you or get you connected. We all know that, skills matter, experience matters, but relationships matter more. That's always been true. It's still true. We can lament it all we want, but it's the fact. It's easier to kind of cross that bridge when you know someone who can hold your hand and help you get across.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say, don't stop learning. Don't stop learning. There's a lot out there right now. People are being very generous, right, with their knowledge and with their wisdom. And so this is a wonderful time to learn new skills, to understand more contextually, about what's going on in business. There are business schools right now who are putting courses out there for free. So what a great opportunity to refine your skills, right? And to get to know more about what's going on. What I would also say is I think this is a really unique opportunity for another reason, which is one of the ways Gen X has been a bridge builder is I think we've been watching this shift to remote work, the shift to flexible freedom,
right,
to millennials and Gen Z wanting to work from home or work differently. And we've been trying to say to the boomers, right, and to other people in power, you really need to learn to embrace this and meet people where they are, because it could not only benefit you from a talent standpoint, but it could also benefit you financially long-term to really embrace this new way of working. And so many companies have really been resistant. And now they've been thrown into it. They've been forced into it. So times like this are really an opportunity for innovation as well. So if you have new ideas, right, and new ways to solve old problems or new problems, be generous with those ideas. Share them, put them into practice, bring other people along to help you develop them. This is a time for not only reflection, but also for creativity.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for that, Lindsey.
Beautifully said. I mean, I would echo everything, Tara, that you just mentioned. I just on the subject of relationships, I want to dive even deeper into that because it's so important. Yeah, ageism is totally real because people think you're more expensive and maybe less technical when you're older. And there's a reality to that. It is against the law, but it is very real. And what I would say is you have to overcome that in two ways. One is to not draw attention to it yourself, right? To not say, oh, I'm probably too old for this job, or, oh, I'm probably too qualified. Don't take yourself out of the running unnecessarily when you might be a really good candidate. And the second thing is, if I reach out to you, Adrienne, and say, hey, I know that you're hiring, we've worked together in the past, then you're thinking about me as Lindsey. You're not thinking about me as a 45-year-old. And so whenever you see an opportunity, I just want to reiterate any way that you can get yourself into that pile. I had a recruiter tell me I have two piles on my desk. I have the pile of resumes that comes from the internet, and I have the pile that comes from people I know, right? You want to get into that smaller pile. And any way you can do that through alumni, through friends, through family, through LinkedIn connections, however, is always going to be valuable. So you could send 1,000 resumes and not hear back. But if you send 3 to people who actually know you, you're going to have a better opportunity. That has always been true, but I think it's infinitely more true right now.
Yeah.
Well, that was so well. I could not top that. That is so wonderful. And I think both of you guys have really narrowed in on so eloquently that point of relationships and just taking action. And you're right, ageism, Lindsey, does exist. And I hear a lot about through the work that I do, but also because I'm passionately focused on helping to curb that as well as you and Tara in your work. But you have to kind of reframe the narrative and reframe your thinking. And Tara, you mentioned earlier about look at ways to add value. And I think one of the main takeaways from this conversation that I hope all of us that are listening from any generation, but specifically for those of us in this sandwich middle that are struggling personally and professionally and just trying to navigate the waters with kids and our own personal growth, is that how do we come out this better and stronger together? How can we utilize this moment to create new bridges to new individuals, to broaden our network? And for the network that we currently have and the relationships that we currently have nurtured, how can we make those stronger? And I believe taking this time to look at your skills, look at your network, and internally do a self-inventory and look at your own value that you know that you can add, that you feel good about adding, and bring those worlds together. Because we as Gen Xers, we do have a unique perspective. We've been through this, we've seen some things, but also we're at the point now where we can add more value than many of us even realize. So I just want to just thank both of you for joining me on this conversation. This is the first, but it won't be the last about this, because we do need to talk about these things more as a generation. We do need to come together to look at ways that we can grow, not only within ourselves, but help build stronger bridges for others. So before we sign off, if both of you would mind telling everyone how they can continue to keep in contact with you, to follow you, to just continue to learn from you. And also, before you sign off, just what are you going to do moving forward, and the lessons that you've even espoused today, your own advice. What are you going to do even better starting after this conversation? Tara, well, you're up next.
Yeah, so I would love for people to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me under Tara Jaye Frank. I'm also on Twitter at Tara initial J Frank. On Facebook at Tara Jaye Frank. And then my foundation, More Than a Movement, is on Twitter and Instagram at More Than Move. And also on Facebook at More Than a Healing Movement.
Got it.
So how can we come out of this stronger? I honestly love that we had this conversation. You built a bridge today. I did not know Lindsey before today, but I will certainly look forward to staying connected and getting to know you better. I'm sitting here thinking, gosh, I probably need to start doing, weekly sister circles, right? Like, I'm not trying to leave you out. Love you, brothers. But bringing together just phenomenal, women and people really that I know in a format like this to talk about things that matter. Because you get reminded, right? When you watch or experience something like this, you're reminded of how much it matters to keep these conversations going, and to more deeply understand, again, what it is that we have in common and kind of our shared human experience. So I would just say, fight the hole, fight the tendency to kind of go into the hole and hide right now.
Got it.
You may have moments like that, but don't let the moments become days. Don't let the days become weeks. Honor yourself, right? Give yourself grace. But then when you have that kind of light shining in, reach for it and pull somebody else along with you. And I think as long as we do that, we'll keep learning, we'll keep growing, and we'll keep building bridges.
Wow. Well, Lindsey, thank you, Tara, so much. Building bridges. Well, I call Lindsey the P. Diddy of generations, because she's the remix.
I've never heard that. Oh my gosh.
You are a natural remixer, but also just talk about what you're going to do moving forward.
Sure. Tara, that was so beautifully said. So beautifully said. What was the first question?
I love it. So the first question is how people can get a hold, and you can swap.
Oh, right. How to get a hold of me. Yes. All the networks. My preference is LinkedIn. I love to connect on LinkedIn. I have a podcast called The Work Remix. But LinkedIn, I always announce all my free webinars and content, all that good stuff. But I'm on all the other networks as Lindsey Pollak as well. I was just so struck by what Tara said about this is not the time to be perfect. doing things, reaching out to people, just kind of taking a little bit of a risk to connect personally and vulnerably and honestly. And I really appreciate that. And, I've done a lot of conversations recently where there is so much resource sharing. I've learned so many things that both of you have mentioned today that are available and out there. I just always want to send the message, you are so not alone. We are distancing, but there are so many people who want to help right now. Organizations, classes, lectures. Tara, you mentioned universities. If you need help, please go and look for it, because I have never seen such an outpouring of support for people in all different situations. And that is what is giving me peace and calm and happiness right now. I hope to contribute to that. I hope that we have today, but there's no need to feel alone or abandoned right now, because there's so much out there to help. And Adrienne, you create that, and you created that today. So thank you for being that voice for people.
No, well, I thank you guys. Thank you for joining me on this conversation. I'm honored to have this conversation with you. We've talked before on another platform, on a podcast, but I think it was so critical because we're all in this together, as you both mentioned, and we're all trying to learn to grow together. And I think that the way for us to do that is to have moments like these, not only virtually, but when we get through this, even physically. And, as Gen Xers, we're known to kind of doing our thing and being on our own and kind of letting it happen. And we're naturally, we do this, but I think at this moment and at this time, this is the time to not only look at what you have to offer, but let's really, really, really be more connected together. And so we can get stronger, we can build stronger bridges. Thank you so much for joining, ladies. Thank you for watching. Now, also, if you're watching this will be on the replay. So please share, please comment. We'll see all your comments. So if you have questions, please share. And look, we will get through this, but the only way we can get through this effectively is if we do it together and build stronger bridges. All right, take care. We're signing off. And thank you for Gen X Amplified Live, the first one.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.